Thanks be to God for trailblazers, for innovators, for rebels and rabble-rousers. If you're looking to jumpstart your creativity, if you're looking for inspiration to propel your ministry, if you're looking for sound homiletical wisdom to guide your sermon development and delivery, then you're in luck. Today I'm sharing my top 6 most formative homiletical OGs. These scholars and teachers deserve our respect and our deep appreciation for laying the homiletical foundation upon which we now stand. You can't talk about Christian proclamation in America without mentioning my mentor, my Dr. Vater, and my biggest cheerleader, the Reverend Dr. Thomas G. Long. Dr. Long is the Bandy Professor of Preaching Emeritus at Candler School of Theology. He has written some of the most influential homiletical texts over the past 30 years. His distinctive marks are his seamless engagement with scripture, philosophy, literature, and theology, and his ability to break down complex homiletical tasks so that even someone like me can understand. I most appreciate Dr. Long's deep conviction in the power of story to carry ancient texts into contemporary contexts, and his theological commitments that are rooted in the Reformed tradition. My 2 favorite texts from Dr. Long are his best-selling The Witness of Preaching and Preaching from Memory to Hope. But he has a new book set to come out late this year or early next year on preaching the parables that I cannot wait to read. For my money, and yes, I'm biased, Dr. Long is Homiletics' GOAT. If you don't know, now you know. Some homileticians are endowed with a special charism, a gift of the Spirit that makes them powerful behind the pulpit and compelling behind the computer. Among homileticians, few can measure up to the Reverend Dr. Frank Thomas. Dr. Thomas currently serves as the founding director of the PhD program in African American Preaching and Sacred Rhetoric, and the Nettie, Sweeney, and Hugh T.H. Miller Professor of Homiletics at Christian Theological Seminary in Indianapolis. What I most appreciate about Dr. Thomas is his relentless demand for preaching that makes a real difference in the world. Dr. Thomas hails from a prestigious homiletical lineage, and the marks of his mentor and trailblazer Dr. Henry Mitchell resound throughout Dr. Thomas's teaching and preaching. I especially see this in the first book of his that I read, jubilantly titled,
They Like to Never Quit Praising God.
His Dangerous trilogy is mandatory reading in my advanced homiletical theory courses. What I love about these books is Dr. Thomas's spectacular blend of idealism and pragmatism. He exhorts preachers to preach dangerously, to be bold and brave in challenging structures of injustice and inequity. If we're not stirring up trouble in the pulpit, we are missing a fundamental aspect of our calling. But at the same time, Dr. Thomas knows that we have jobs and families to think about. For my money, he balances these tensions beautifully. On a personal note, I'm deeply indebted to Dr. Thomas for writing a foreword to my latest book, Stand Up Preaching. This is a testament to his generous spirit and empowering presence in our guild. Every once in a while, you stumble across a book that reframes how you think about sermon development and delivery. I vividly remember the first time I read Dr. Leonora Tisdale's transformative text, Preaching as Local Theology and Folk Art. This is a brilliant text that urges preachers to put just as much time into exegeting their congregations as they do into exegeting the biblical text. What's totally freaking crazy is that this book arose from her doctoral dissertation under the supervision of our shared Dr. Vater, Dr. Tom Long. Dr. Tubbs Tisdale has also written a fantastic text in her Prophetic Preaching, a Pastoral Approach, that refuses a classic duality between prophetic preaching that challenges and exhorts and pastoral preaching that comforts and encourages. This book is absolutely drenched in practical pastoral wisdom that refuses to ignore the on-the-ground realities preachers face when they are called to preach prophetically. Every class of preaching students at Columbia Theological Seminary has heard me remind them that when they are preaching, they're never not also pastoring. And I owe this nugget to Dr. Tubbs Tisdale. I was excited to read her most recent book, How Women Transform Preaching. This book melds historical insight into the influence women have had on preaching in North America, with candid interviews about the trials and travails her fellow female-identifying homileticians have faced throughout their pastoral and scholarly careers. This book is a must-read, both as a reminder of how much we owe to preaching women and how far we still have to go. If you haven't read anything by Dr. Tubbs Tisdale, fix that now. I'm a homiletician because of a few folks whose research, writing, and generous spirit jostled something loose in my soul. At the top of that list is the Reverend Dr. John McClure. Dr. McClure is the Charles Finney Professor of Homiletics Emeritus at Vanderbilt Divinity School. When I was an MDiv student, I stumbled upon his mind-blowing text, Otherwise Preaching. And it was this text that expanded my homiletical horizon more than any other. Otherwise Preaching engages the philosophy of Emmanuel Levinas in a way that exposes and critiques the totalizing impulses in contemporary homiletical theories. More recently, Dr. McClure has written Ethical Approaches to Preaching, which my advanced preaching students have loved. If you're a preacher or church leader and you haven't read this book, order it right now. Go ahead, I'll wait. The book offers a fourfold framework for understanding how we make ethical claims in the pulpit. The book came out in 2021 and I've already read it twice. In addition to his scholarly output, which is extraordinary, I most appreciate Dr. McClure's generous and collaborative spirit. Even as he has produced some of the most exhilarating and groundbreaking homileticians in the past 2 decades, he's taken the time to invest in folks like me, who didn't study with him at Bandy. In the academy, we speak of Dr. Vaters and Mutters, but in Dr. McClure's case, I'm going to invent a new category of Dr. Uncle. Next on my list of groundbreaking homileticians is the Reverend Dr. Teresa Fry-Brown. Dr. Fry-Brown currently serves as the Bandy Professor of Preaching at Candler School of Theology. In addition to this prestigious chair, Dr. Fry-Brown was the first African-American woman to earn the rank of full professor at Candler School of Theology. And she just received a $1 million grant from the Lilly Endowment to support her historiographic work for her denomination, which is the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Dr. Fry-Brown epitomizes a dual love for the church and the academy, one which continues to inspire my work and witness. Dr. Fry-Brown is one of the most dynamic, eloquent, and brilliant preachers in America today. She possesses a talent for scholarship, for teaching, and for preaching that makes me wonder if she got her hands on a Harry Potter time turner or something. Her work in womanist homiletics has expanded the generic and discursive framework for homiletical scholarship, and she's leveraged her first career as a speech pathologist to help preachers reimagine eloquence in our contemporary cultural contexts. I'm excited that Dr. Fry-Brown is the current president of the Academy of Homiletics, and her inauguration sermon at last year's annual meeting was one of the most powerful and poetic sermons I've ever heard. Full stop. The last, but certainly not least among my list of homiletical OGs, is the Reverend Dr. Ronald Allen. Dr. Allen was ordained in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ and served as professor of preaching, gospels, and letters at Christian Theological Seminary from 1982 until his retirement in 2019. I don't know how he does it, but Dr. Allen is a publishing phenom. I sat down to count how many books Dr. Allen has authored, co-authored, or edited throughout his prestigious career, but I can't count that high. Just last year, he published 3 groundbreaking texts. Dude, 3 books in 1 year? How do you do that? Among last year's books are 2 volumes on preaching the manifold grace of God, which captures articulations of how different historical denominations understand the work of sermon development and delivery, and theologies of preaching in contemporary theological families. He also published the first book-length exposition of preaching from a perspective of process theology. It's entitled, You Never Stand in the Same Pulpit Twice. Fantastic book. You gotta read it. Among the many things I respect about Dr. Allen's work and witness is his expansive vision for preaching. In his introductory textbook and monographs, he consistently argues for a big homiletical tent that honors our cultural and denominational differences. It doesn't matter what kind of church you serve. You'll find Dr. Allen to be a theologically and homiletically invigorating conversation partner. Check out his work today.